Here's something that'll make you uncomfortable. The animal you love reveals parts of your personality you've been hiding from yourself for years. I'm not talking about the cute internet stereotypes. Not the dog people are outgoing, cat people are introverted nonsense you've seen recycled on social media 1,000 times. I'm talking about something far more unsettling. Patterns that psychologists have spent decades uncovering. Patterns that reach into childhood trauma, attachment disorders, control issues, and psychological defense mechanisms you didn't even know you had. Because here's what researchers discovered when they stopped asking surface-level questions and started digging into the actual psychological profiles of cat lovers versus dog lovers. The differences aren't just preferences. They're fundamentally different approaches to relationships, power, vulnerability, and emotional risk. And what they found in the data is honestly kind of disturbing. Cat people and dog people don't just choose different pets. They're operating from entirely different psychological frameworks shaped by different childhood experiences, different trust patterns, different levels of comfort with dependency and control. So before you dismiss this as just another fun personality quiz topic, let me ask you something. Why does the mere mention of preferring cats over dogs or dogs over cats trigger such visceral defensive reactions in people? Why do online debates between cat lovers and dog lovers get so heated, so personal, so weirdly intense? It's because, deep down, everyone senses this goes much deeper than pet preference. It touches something more fundamental about who we are and how we navigate the world. And what the research reveals is darker and more complex than most people want to acknowledge. Part 1. The attachment wound. Here's what most people don't realize: you're not really choosing the animal. You're unconsciously recreating the attachment pattern you learned as a child, or you're desperately trying to correct it. John Bowlby, the psychologist who developed attachment theory, discovered that relationship patterns you form with your primary caregivers in the first few years of life become the template for how you approach all relationships. Not just romantic relationships, all relationships, including the ones you form with animals. Dog lovers, statistically speaking, are more likely to have had what's called secure attachment in childhood. Their caregivers were consistently responsive, emotionally available, and reliably present. Because of that, they learned that expressing needs is safe, that reaching out leads to connection, and that dependency isn't dangerous. So as adults, they're drawn to dogs because dogs perfectly mirror that secure attachment pattern. Dogs are enthusiastically responsive. They're emotionally transparent. They're reliably excited to see you. There's no guessing, no games, no ambiguity. But cat lovers? The data tells a very different story. Cat people are significantly more likely to have experienced what psychologists call avoidant attachment or anxious attachment in childhood. These are attachment styles that develop when caregivers are inconsistently available, emotionally unpredictable, or sometimes overwhelming, and other times completely withdrawn. Children who grow up with this inconsistency learn something crucial. Direct expressions of need are risky. Sometimes reaching out gets you connection, sometimes it gets you rejection, and you can never quite predict which. So you adapt. You learn to be more self-sufficient. You learn to appreciate connection when it comes, but you don't depend on it being there. And then you grow up and meet a cat. Cats don't do the enthusiastic, predictable, always available thing that dogs do. Cats are selective. They're independent. They come to you on their own terms. They show affection when they want to, not necessarily when you want them to. They require you to read subtle signals. For someone with avoidant or anxious attachment, this doesn't feel frustrating. It feels familiar. It feels like the love they learned to understand as a child, love that's real but conditional, love that requires you to be attuned and careful. Studies from the University of Texas found that dog lovers score significantly higher on agreeableness and extroversion. High agreeableness means you're oriented toward maintaining social harmony. You value cooperation, you avoid conflict, you're willing to adjust your behavior to make relationships smoother. Dog lovers are more likely to be people pleasers, more likely to defer to others, more likely to put relationship maintenance above personal authenticity. And dogs reward that pattern perfectly. They love you unconditionally. But cat lovers scored higher on neuroticism and openness to experience. Neuroticism isn't about being anxious, it's about being highly sensitive to emotional nuance, highly attuned to environmental threats, highly aware of complexity. Cat people are more likely to be psychologically vigilant. They're scanning for danger that others miss. They're picking up subtleties that people with secure attachment might overlook. And here's the kicker. Research shows that cat lovers are significantly more likely to have experienced childhood trauma or neglect than dog lovers. When psychologists studied pet preferences in relation to adverse childhood experiences scores, they found that people who reported higher levels of childhood trauma were significantly more likely to prefer cats. Why? Because cats offer connection that feels safer when trust has been broken early in life. They don't demand vulnerability. They don't require you to be emotionally available all the time. They love you, but in a way that respects your need for control and boundaries. Part 2. The control paradox. Let's talk about power and control, because this is where things get genuinely disturbing. On the surface, it seems like dog people are comfortable with control. Dogs are trainable. You can teach them commands, shape their behavior, establish clear rules. But psychologists discovered something fascinating. Dog people actually have significantly more anxiety about control than cat people do. Think about what training a dog really represents psychologically. It's about creating predictability, establishing clear expectations so you always know where you stand. Dog people invest enormous time into training precisely because they're uncomfortable with behavioral unpredictability. Cat people barely attempt traditional training. Why? Because they're fundamentally more comfortable with not being in control. They accept that the cat will do what the cat will do, and they adapt rather than trying to change it. That acceptance reveals something profound. Cat people have made peace with the fact that you can't control other beings. Dog people haven't made that peace. They're still operating from the belief that with enough effort, enough training, enough structure, you can create reliable predictability. Research on locus of control found striking differences. Dog people scored higher on internal locus of control. They believe their actions directly determine outcomes. This sounds positive, but there's a dark side. When you believe everything is within your control, you also believe everything is your responsibility. Every failure is your fault. Cat people scored higher on external locus of control. They're more likely to believe outcomes are influenced by factors beyond their control. Cat people have learned something dog people resist. You cannot control other beings. You can only control your response to them. Here's where it gets politically uncomfortable. Political psychologists found consistent correlations between pet preference and political orientation. Dog people lean more conservative. Cat people lean more liberal or libertarian. Why? Because conservatism is psychologically about comfort with hierarchy, tradition, and established authority. And that aligns with how dog people experience relationships. Hierarchy works. Structure works. Liberals and libertarians are fundamentally skeptical of hierarchy. They prioritize individual autonomy over stability and order. That aligns perfectly with the cat person's framework. Authority must be earned, not assumed. Part 3. The intimacy equation. Now let's talk about intimacy, because this is where differences become almost mathematically predictable. Intimacy researchers distinguish between hot intimacy and cold intimacy. Dog people overwhelmingly prefer hot intimacy, high emotional intensity, frequent physical affection, constant communication, low tolerance for distance. They want relationships that are emotionally intense and physically demonstrative. Dogs offer exactly that. They're enthusiastically affectionate, thrilled to see you every time, want to be near you constantly. Cat people gravitate toward cold intimacy, comfort with silence, lower frequency of explicit affection, more space for independence, measuring connection by quality rather than quantity. They feel close doing parallel activities without needing to interact. Cats offer exactly that. They show affection selectively and subtly, content to be near you without demanding attention. Here's the crisis. When a hot intimacy person and a cold intimacy person try to build something together, they're speaking fundamentally different languages of love. The hot intimacy person pursues, wants more communication, more time, more explicit affection. The cold intimacy person retreats, feels crowded and demanded from. Research found that couples where both partners prefer the same type of pet report significantly higher relationship satisfaction. Pet preference is actually a proxy for intimacy style, one of the most fundamental determinants of relationship success. Part 4. The darkness within. Now the shadow side of both preferences, where things get genuinely uncomfortable. Dog lovers are significantly more prone to codependency. excessive emotional reliance, difficulty with boundaries, deriving self-worth through being needed by others. Dogs are perfect codependency enablers. They need you constantly. Their entire existence revolves around you. For someone with codependent tendencies, that feels like love. But codependent people don't just want to be needed, they need to be needed. And dogs provide that without complications. Dog people are also more prone to external validation dependency, deriving self-worth from how others perceive them. People stop you to admire your dog becomes social validation. But none of that addresses the internal void that external validation can never fill. Cat lovers are significantly more prone to avoidant personality patterns, social inhibition, feelings of inadequacy, hypersensitivity to rejection. They want connection but fear rejection so much they preemptively withdraw. Cats validate that story perfectly. They don't demand social engagement. So you tell yourself, I'm not avoiding connection. I'm just naturally independent like my cat. But research found cat owners report significantly higher levels of loneliness than dog owners, yet they're significantly less likely to seek out human connection to address it. Cat people are also prone to emotional bypassing, intellectualizing feelings rather than experiencing them. When hurt, they analyze it, create narratives, establish distance from the emotion, and cats never push them to do otherwise. Here's what's truly disturbing. Your pet choice isn't helping you grow. It's helping you avoid growth. Dog people surround themselves with beings that never challenge their codependency or need for external validation. Cat people surround themselves with beings that never challenge their avoidance or fear of intimacy. Both groups have found the perfect enabler, and they've convinced themselves it's love. The truth you don't want to hear. Neither dog people nor cat people have the complete picture of what healthy relationships actually require. Dog people understand loyalty, consistency, and enthusiastic affection, but they struggle with boundaries, autonomy, and accepting that love doesn't always look like constant availability. Cat people understand independence, respect for boundaries, and comfort with emotional complexity, but they struggle with vulnerability, consistent engagement, and accepting that love sometimes requires showing up even when it's uncomfortable. The healthiest relationship framework incorporates both. But most people never achieve that balance because they're trapped in the psychological framework their pet preference reveals. You probably recognized yourself in this analysis. You probably felt defensive at certain points. That defensiveness? That's the psychological framework protecting itself. The question isn't whether you're a dog person or a cat person. The question is whether you're willing to examine what that preference reveals about the psychological wounds you're still carrying and the growth you're still avoiding. So here's what I want you to do. Don't just watch this video and move on. Actually sit with this for a moment. Think about why you prefer the animal you prefer. Think about the relationship patterns you keep recreating. I want to hear from you in the comments. Are you a dog person or a cat person? Did you recognize yourself in any of these psychological patterns? What childhood experiences shaped your preference? If you found this analysis valuable, hit that subscribe button. I create content that goes deeper than surface-level personality tests. I'm here to examine the uncomfortable psychological truths that shape how we live and love. Share this video with someone who has the opposite pet